Good day everyone, I'm Ethan, moderator for this webinar. On behalf of the organizer conference panel, I welcome everyone for today's webinar, Criminal Prosecutions Against Doctors for Overprescribing Scheduled Drugs. I'd now like to introduce our presenter for today, Mark R. Benjamin. Mark R. Benjamin is an experienced attorney in administrative and professional licensure law representing a wide variety of professional clients from licensed individual healthcare practitioners to licensed healthcare facilities and many others.
Thank you, conference panel. I am on the Eastern Time Zone, but good afternoon to everyone on the Eastern Time Zone, and good morning to everyone on Mountain Time and Pacific. This is the topic of criminal prosecutions against doctors, and we're going to cover more than just physicians for overprescribing scheduled drugs, how the Supreme Court in June totally changed the rules to protect doctors and others in the fight against the opioid epidemic. I want to be able effectively to cover and identify the basics of the standard of care for doctors who write prescribed painkillers, setting a new standard for criminal prosecutions against doctors. So I do have some disclaimers about our material, about what this does and does not cover. So we'll discuss some of the basics of prescription writing for scheduled drugs, but we will review some of the prescription writing standards, the do's and don'ts under state licensure law. We will review a bare definition of the standard of care. We will examine medical standards found in national and state codes of ethics. And as an example of that, we will involve a review of Elvis Presley impersonators' codes of ethics. So with regard to the basics of prescription writing for scheduled drugs, here's an example of a state administrative regulation. Those are all the kind of cookbook recipe style things that a APRN has to do. The standard of care defined. A doctor may be disciplined for the failure to meet the minimum standards of performance in diagnosis and treatment. So more on the basics of prescription writing for scheduled drugs. We also have some medical standards found in national and state codes of ethics. Usually those are not binding. They're just aspirational. The World Health Organization also suggested the multi-step approach, that a major component of ethical prescribing is examination of each patient's distinct needs, and that is aspirational. There are medical standards in these national and state codes of ethics, and we will examine some other ones. The Nurse Practitioner Healthcare Foundation, we have examples and of a definition of the standard of care, a provision of the Controlled Substances Act, which is codified in the United States Code, makes it a federal crime except as authorized for any person knowingly or intentionally to manufacture, distribute, or dispense a controlled substance such as opioids. Registered doctors, licensed healthcare practitioners may prescribe these substances to their patients. We come now to the seminal case from June of 2022. It was a combined case accepted because of a split in the circuits by the United States Supreme Court, Ruan and Khan versus United States. Let's look at some examples. I gave you kind of the silly example of amputating the wrong leg. So in the Ruan and Khan cases, those kinds of iffy on the border situations have really changed. A conviction under this statute, remember this is a healthcare fraud statute involving a battle of the experts and the unnecessary procedures billed for and paid for by insurance. So back to the Ruan case, the ruling that the Supreme Court, the government prosecutions had harmed patients with legitimate medical needs for pain pills and thus had forced the doctors to act unethically. So in summary, the United States Supreme Court issued the Ruan decision for the entire healthcare community. Really, it applies to any prescriber who's prosecuted under the Controlled Substances Act that defines what level of intent the government must prove to convict a prescriber for the unlawful distribution of a controlled substance under the Controlled Substances Act. So how to protect yourself? What are tips and techniques? If you're the prescriber, document, document, document. You need to have good record. We are winding up here. I hope we have covered all of these things, the basics of the standard of care for doctors, examples of state licensure laws, other healthcare practitioners who have prescriptive authority. The very top takeaways, we are rounding home plate here. Thank you all for your time and attention. This was really a good and worthwhile use of our time. Everyone stay safe out there and look for more of our conference panel webinars to come. Over and out.